Important thing is preparation. So once preparation, so you need to prepare for accepting the patient. So you try the patient and then go through the pathway. So preparation wise, the patient will come to the resuscitation bay where you have all the equipment, monitoring, ventilation, and also the manpower. So when EMS notify the hospital, usually to the emergency department, so they will give a trauma call. So what is trauma call? It's a call, like trauma, there are indications to activate trauma call, but it's depend on their guidelines. So you activate a trauma call. It gives, like, it notifies emergency department, surgical specialty, and also according to the indication subspecialties are neurosurgical, orthopedic, and also the anesthetist. So this team should be prepared before the patient comes to the resuscitation bay. And also, so once these personnel come into the scene, the hospital, the resuscitation bay, they are called trauma team. So usually you have to wear something that you have to notify who you are. And all this trauma team comprised of a team leader, an airway doctor and assistant, and a procedure doctors. So there are a few members. So the team leader's duty is to overall coordination. So he will be the person who coordinate with the other specialities, other hospitals, blood banks for the referrals with the OTs. So he'll be in charge of the overall coordinator. Usually he's a emergency department doctor, and so altogether they will manage the trauma. So triaging is very important in not only in trauma, in any patient. So there are different types of triage is being used. One is like if you are EMS or going to the field, pre-hospital, you do pre-hospital triaging. There are different types of triaging they have been using in work, and also they are very simple triaging systems. But when it comes to the hospital triaging, it's depend on the injuries, vital signs, and the mechanism. So they are complicated triages, but it's very important because you sort the patients according to the treatment priority. So once the patient receives, so you go through the primary survey. So we all know what A, B, C, D, E are. So the most importantly, when you go through the system, you reassess if there is any problem to take. So you have to do the A, B, C, D. If you find something, again come to the A and reassess. So there are goals in our management. In trauma, there is a thing called lethal triad. Hypothermia, acidosis, and coagulation. The ultimate goal of our management is to prevent any of those happening to the patient. So with regard to the airway, so I think like most of doctors, we know how to evaluate airway. So I will rush through all these things. So in emergency department, you take every airway is as a difficult airway because the airways are not tested. There will be so much problems with the airway. So you take all the necessary precautions to deal the difficult airway. So usually, if you can talk to the patient, if the patient can talk to you back, you know A, B, C, D is fairly alright. But make sure you look for signs of threatened airway like stridors, hoarseness, gurgling, blood pooling, something like that. So you need actions if you find the airways threatened. And also, unless proven otherwise, in multi-system trauma, you take necessary precautions to stabilize the airway. So usually you stabilize initially with the manual, you call it like spinal motion restriction, and also you apply a cervical collars and headlocks and straps until you go patient to the radiology for imaging. So if you need interventions, you remove the cervical collar, keep the spinal motion restriction, and do the airway maneuvers. Right. For the airway interventions, so every patient with regardless of the saturation, trauma, multi-trauma victims will be given oxygen. And according to their secretions, so you will do the secretions, and if the patient cannot maintain the airway, you do chin lifting, jaw thrusting, but you don't do head tilting because of the spinal, cervical spine injury is not excluded. And also airways, especially you don't apply nasal airways if you are suspecting basal skull fractures. And if you need a definitive airways, you go for drug-assisted intubation with cervical spine immobilization. In intubation, there are areas where there are advantages and disadvantages as well. One is cricoid pressure and birth maneuver, that's backward, upward, rightward pressure maneuver, and also there are external angle manipulation. So all these things has its own advantages and disadvantages and should be applied according to the doctor's clinical expertise. For the intubation, video and optic imaging techniques are preferred. And to confirm the tube placement, usually you use clinical methods like misting, air entry, equal air entries, but detection of end-tidal CO2 is the gold standard. As I said earlier, all these airways are difficult airways, so we have to have a rescue plans, either plan A, B, C, something like that. And ultimately, if you cannot intubate, you have to go for surgical airways. First, needle thoracotomies, not in needle cricothyroidotomies, and surgical cricothyroidotomies. And with regard to breathing and ventilation, so if the patient has airway patency, it does not ensure that the patient is having adequate ventilation. So make sure you go for inspection, palpation, and auscultate to assess the breathing on the ventilation of the patient. And there are also threatened signs like deviated trachea, absent breath sounds, sucking chest wounds, and crepitus. Usually you have a saturation probe with saturation, but in trauma, sometimes saturation also has limitations, like in vasoconstriction, sometimes you will not be able to get good saturation. And there are few conditions in primary survey you have to pick up and you don't have to miss, because these things are life-threatening in minutes to hours. So one is tension pneumothorax, the other one is the open chest wound or open pneumothorax, and massive hemothorax, and some of the tracheobronchial injuries and cardiac tamponades. Most of these things are clinically detected, but with the advancement of ultrasound in trauma, the picking up of cardiac tamponade is increased. So this is just an illustration of tension pneumothorax, so there's a collapse of the lung and also the shifting of the mediastinum. So it causes obstructive kind of a shock. So in the breathing interventions, so if you find it's a tension pneumothorax, in periphery you compress needle decompression in 4th and 5th intercostal space in mid-axillary line. But earlier in our student area and also when we were training, like we were doing all these things in 2nd intercostal space, but now they have preferred the area of 4th and 5th intercostal space in mid-axillary line. In pediatrics, still the same, in 2nd intercostal space in mid-clavicular line. And for the chest tubes, for pneumothorax or hemothorax, you go for 28 to 32 French. And also in periphery and in hospitals where there is specialities like in trauma call, if there is a surgical registrar is also present, you don't have to do the needle thoracotomy, needle decompression. You can straight away go for chest tube insertion. And in periphery again, if you have a sucking chest wound, you apply occlusive dressing in 3-sided dressing to prevent further worsening of the pneumothorax. And as I said earlier, modified FAST recommended to identification of pneumothorax and cardiac tamponade. This is just illustration. Breathing. And moving into the circulation, in trauma, if a patient comes with hypotension, unless proven otherwise, it's a hemorrhagic shock. There may be coexistent other shocks as well, like for example, if somebody is having a pneumothorax, they will have an obstructive shock, but make sure you exclude hemorrhagic shock in a trauma patient with hypotension. So rapid assessment with the blood pressure and pulse pressures, pulse rate and extremes, and also capillary refilling and conscious level. So this is one of the diagrams we have been seeing for a long time. So this is a hemorrhage by its class, like there are 1 to 4 classes, where class 1 is asymptomatic patients, and class 2 like up to 30% with normal systolic blood pressure and high diastolic or internal low pulse pressures with tachycardias. And we have to remember the class 3, because if somebody is coming, if a patient, trauma victim, coming with a tachycardia and low blood pressure, he belongs to the class 3.